Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to start tonight by talking about the topic of leadership when it comes to this budget. Leadership is important to consider when we debate finances, because when people vote for their councillors, they're not just choosing someone who will do a good job of administration, they're looking for someone who will bring much needed change. People want fresh ideas. They want innovation, not a repeat of the past. The Conservatives' amendment shows that we, as a party, are capable of fresh and new ideas. We're capable of looking for new ways of working, and we don't only look backwards. Our amendment shows leadership. This is important when we look at the national economic climate. Things are getting better, but slowly. The Xi Jinping virus has waned. British tanks will soon join Germans in rolling across Ukraine to end Putin's invasion, and inflation is beginning to fall. But the COVID debts are huge, government spending remains out of control, and the threat of a socialist government with even more spending and taxes hangs over Britain. People are struggling, and this evening we as a chamber will be voting to increase these people's council tax. We will be putting our hands into these people's pockets and taking more out. They have no power to object, and they face courts if they refuse. This is why we must respect the idea at the very heart of conservatism, the idea that it is their money, not ours. While some Conservatives have lost sight of that, Havering Conservatives have not, and our amendment shows it. Mr. Mayor, our amendment delivers on three key priorities: a commitment to fighting ULEZ, a freeze and consultation on parking charges, and a hardship fund to help our residents through the tough times ahead. Mr. Mayor, it is important that we as a chamber and in opposition recognise the hard work of the officers and the councillors who put this budget together. This is one of the most important and difficult budgets that Havering has had to work on. Whilst it doesn't deliver everything I'd want it to, it is balanced. That in itself is evidence of the hard work that has gone into it. Mr. Mayor, on behalf of Havering Conservatives, I extend my sincere thanks to all at Havering Council. As people will be aware, I'm a fan of scrutiny. I enjoy getting out my calculator, crunching the numbers, and Mr. Mayor, I don't think that as Conservatives we've been given enough time to fully scrutinise this budget. However, I want to praise the cross-party working that did take place. I'm grateful to Councillor O'Sullivan for bringing forward and extending this scrutiny meeting. I believe we are all grateful for the time we were given, and I think we need more of that. Cross-party scrutiny that is not afraid of a late night. Mr. Mayor, I want to highlight some of the successes of the budget that's been presented to us today. After all, the Conservatives are proposing amendments, not a new budget. The administration got to work straight away in poring over the contracts. They identified ways in which the council could save. They carried out extensive consultation and they worked hard. Of particular note, they worked from the ground up on some of the major budgets. Instead of tinkering at the edges, this administration rebuilt, and it has delivered some sensible savings. Over £500,000 have been saved through team restructurings. £400,000 has been found through realising the commercial potential of some of our assets. £4 million of savings have been found over the next 4 years in adult and social services. And Mr. Mayor, as the member champion for the voluntary sector, I was particularly pleased to see the continued funding for the Citizens Advice Bureau. Mr. Mayor, I commend the administration on putting together what they have. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, as a councillor for Romford's town centre, I can tell you that some of the budget proposal was a sour read. Our town centre, the economic centre of this borough, is being treated somewhat as a cash machine. The budget delivers a double whammy to our high street, selling off the car parks and surging the car parking prices by as much as 40%. The increase in parking fares has been greeted with horror by local businesses, and from what we can see, the increased revenue is being used directly to provide free parking in Moorchurch and Upminster. This budget does not deliver a fair deal for Romford. Mr. Mayor, over 750 of Romford's car parking spaces will be up for sale, and 50 of those are disabled spaces. They will be sold to developers. They are the heart of our town, and they're vital for places such as the Brookside Theatre, whose clients use the Slaney Way car park when watching the show. Mr. Mayor, we mustn't price people out of the few parking spaces that will remain. As I said earlier, at the heart of conservatism is the belief that this is their money, not ours. This is why our amendment proposes freezing parking prices across the entire borough, and then proposing a borough-wide consultation with residents and local businesses consulted. This will design a parking fare strategy that works for everybody. Next, Mr. Mayor, Havering Conservatives are proposing a £1.5 million hardship fund. For much of the last administration, our borough was battling with the Xi Jinping virus, COVID. The leader at the time, supported by the fantastic staff at Havering Council, kept our borough running. Weekly bin collections were maintained. Free school meals were extended beyond government support, and the Havering Help Scheme was also funded. Mr. Mayor, the budget recognises that some of those challenges still remain, and the administration has done a good job of maintaining support. However, we believe that this support needs to be increased. The money will go a long way to showing that residents are our priority. It shows we're not ignorant to their struggles, and that we're going to be creative in finding new ways to make things work. Mr. Mayor, this proposal, like the others, shows that we know it is their money, not ours. So here's the question: where do we get this money from? As I touched on at the start of my time, we get it by showing leadership, new ideas, not recycling the past. The first of these is recognition that the council has seen a reduction in staffing and a reduction in what it does. Mr. Mayor, we propose that this reduction is reflected in the number of CLT posts. Our amendment removes 6 of these posts, delivering savings of over $600,000 in a full year. Alongside this, we're proposing to merge the regeneration services into the Housing Directorate, funding it through the Housing Revenue account as opposed to general funds. And we believe that this delivers a more appropriate structure that recognises the changes in Havering's regeneration plans. By removing this director role, we will save a further £97,000 of the taxpayers' money. £1 million is found through reducing the provisions for unachieved savings. Mr. Mayor, Conservatives have full confidence in our council team and the Cabinet to deliver the plan that they have put forward. We are therefore proposing that the provision be halved. People are in need now. The money needs to be spent now. I'm in favour of saving for a rainy day, but the rain is here. Let's get their money to work. There's another source of savings, Mr. Mayor, and it's one of the more unpopular ones. But it's important when it comes to showing the residents that we are not just administrators, we are leaders. Mr. Mayor, the Conservatives are proposing a reduction in certain special responsibility allowances. We're proposing to cut back on top politicians' pay in order to step up our support of the most vulnerable. Before the election, and thanks to an amendment by the East Havering Group, SRAs were reduced. In fact, Mr. Mayor, that evening, every group put forward and voted for reductions of some level. Our proposed new structure returns the leaders and others' allowances back to pre-election levels. Mr. Mayor, we are also proposing a system that rewards councillors and chairmen who put in the most. Being a councillor is not just about turning up to meetings. It's about meeting constituents. It's hours of casework, and it isn't easy, not if you want to do it well. Some members are lucky enough to be high earners, but many are not. They still do hard work, which is why we are proposing to leave the basic allowance as it is. The changes proposed come in for our chairman, Mr. Mayor. We are proposing to move to a system where chairmen are paid on the number of meetings that they chair, as opposed to a flat rate. I sit on the Strategic Planning Committee. We got off to a flying start. 5 meetings between March and September. Then the work dried up. November's meeting, cancelled. December's meeting, cancelled. January's meeting, cancelled. Mr. Mayor, a total of 7 strategic planning meetings have been cancelled. But the chairman's allowance remains the same. And this isn't unique to planning. The Places Committee has met just 3 times since the election. The allowance, the same. Mr. Mayor, the Labour leader told the Robert Recorder the new structure resourced the committees to meet more often than ever, but the opposite is happening. It's only right, therefore, that we review the structure and the allowances. By moving chairman onto a per-meeting allowance, we will reward the hardest working members and we will save the public money. But most importantly, we will have the ability to increase scrutiny. We hear it a lot. This administration welcomes scrutiny, and I believe it. But it's always in tandem with we reduce the cost of scrutiny or there's no money. Well, we've solved that problem with this amendment, Mr. Mayor. 70% of Havering's budget is spent on adult and children's services, a statutory service. But the scrutiny of this is rolled into people. The meetings don't provide enough time for full evaluation of reports. Conservatives proposed a work plan which was described as unrealistic given the time available. It's not good enough. There should always be time to scrutinise such an important topic. 70% of Havering's budget. A per-meeting allowance will enable this administration to increase scrutiny whilst saving money. A dedicated health and social care committee could be formed. Even more councillors could be given a role in scrutiny, and Mr. Mayor, for less money than we spend now. It makes sense. Pay for when you turned up, increased scrutiny. Being a councillor is a service, and it requires real leaders. I, Mr. Mayor, believe that when people are choosing between fuel and food, leaders should eat last. The Conservatives' amendment shows leadership by putting the taxpayers before ourselves, as Conservatives should be doing. Finally, Mr. Mayor, we come to the topic of ULEZ. Perhaps the best thing for me to do here would be to burst into a rendition of Do You Hear the People Sing? Mr. Mayor, do you hear them singing a song of angry men? Mr. Mayor, will we give all we can? Will we stand up and take our chance? For those of you fond of musicals, I apologise for butchering that. Mr. Mayor, despite the claims of some members, Conservatives have not whipped up any anger around ULEZ. People are already angry. They are angry that Sadiq Khan has ignored them. They are angry at the lip service being paid to them and claims of opposition without any real fight. Mr. Mayor, we know that the Residents' Association are against ULEZ, but I fear they're being held back through their coalition with Labour. Our amendment gives the Residents' Association a chance to show they will fight for the residents. Because Conservatives recognise this is taxpayers' money, we're proposing they use it as they want. We're proposing to fund Havering's participation in a judicial review to overturn ULEZ. Mr. Mayor, we heard the leader's attempts at appeasing people earlier today. We've read his and his deputy's posts over the past few days. They don't think legal action will succeed, and so instead they've decided to focus on calling for a ULEZ delay. Mr. Mayor, our residents don't want ULEZ delayed, they want ULEZ cancelled. Other London boroughs are refusing to roll over. They're combining to provide a true legal opposition to Labour's Khan, and we must do the same. Mr. Mayor, when we debated ULEZ in this chamber, Conservatives proposed a judicial review. I remember the words of the Labour leader after the meeting. We don't want to give money to lawyers, he told me. Well, Mr. Mayor, I do, and the residents do. Taking legal action against Khan is money well spent, and it sends him a clear message that Havering is not soft. We are not just another part of London. We are not a cash machine to fund his ever-growing PR department. However, by sitting on the fence for fear of upsetting their Labour colleagues, Havering has missed the boat, and it may be too late to join in the judicial review. We may be reliant on others to do what our own leaders were afraid to do. Should that be the case, Mr. Mayor, Conservatives propose that the £300,000 allocated for the review be used for a Havering ULEZ fund. Many of our residents lack the means to make the adaptations necessary, especially when it comes to changing their car. A pot of £300,000 could fund a Havering scrappage top-up for our carers and NHS heroes. We could provide extra support to small businesses who will be hard-pressed to meet the rising costs. Mr. Mayor, the Conservatives' amendment delivers 3 key priorities. We freeze parking costs. We provide a hardship fund, and we commit to funding the fight against ULEZ. Mr. Mayor, the budget is good, but good should never be the enemy of great. There is always time to make changes and to do things differently. Our amendment shows true leadership, not a recycling of what went before. It's a new direction that puts residents at the heart of things, recognising it is their money. Mr. Mayor, our amendments do not pitch us versus them. It's us for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second?